We all think of dollar stores as the place to get a great deal. They promise these super low prices, right? But what happens when that promise falls apart right at the checkout counter? Today, we're diving into a really widespread problem: overcharging at two of America's biggest dollar store chains. And it's an issue that, as you'll see, hits the most vulnerable folks the hardest. And really, that's what this is all about. This isn't just a matter of a few cents here and there. We're talking about a consistent pattern of price discrepancies that really adds up, creating serious financial strain for people who are, counting every single dollar. Let's be clear, this isn't just a series of random accidents. It's a systemic problem. So, how did this whole thing even come to light? Well, it all kicked off with what was supposed to be a totally routine inspection, one that ended up uncovering something deeply, deeply wrong. Okay, so let me paint you a picture. It's January of 2023 in a small town called Windsor, North Carolina. A state inspector, a guy named Ryan Caulfield, walks into a Family Dollar. It's his job to do these routine price accuracy checks. He pulls out his scanner gun, starts his work, but what he's about to find is anything but routine. And listen, the differences he found, they weren't small. We're talking about huge markups. A Red Baron pizza that was supposed to be $5, it rang up at $7.65. Bounty paper towels jumped from just under $11 to over $15. These aren't just pennies, these are significant overcharges on things people need every day. So when it was all said and done, the final numbers were just wow. Caulfield scanned 300 items, and 69 of them, that's a staggering 23%, rang up for more than the price on the shelf. In North Carolina, that's more than 10 times the legal limit for errors. This wasn't just a bad day, this was a complete, systematic failure. But here's the thing, that one store in North Carolina, it was really just the tip of the iceberg. Turns out these pricing errors are happening at thousands of stores, and it's ballooned into a full-blown national scandal. Just look at this number. Since the beginning of 2022, Dollar General stores have failed over 4,300 price checks, and that's in just 23 states. Think about that. Thousands of documented cases where customers were almost certainly getting overcharged. And it is absolutely not just one chain. It's the same story over at Family Dollar. They failed over 2,100 inspections in 20 states during that exact same time frame. When you put those numbers together, you get a really disturbing picture of an industry-wide problem that's affecting shoppers all over the country. And in some places, the error rates are just off the charts. I mean, look at this. One Dollar General in Ohio had a 76% error rate. Can you even imagine that? More than 3 out of every 4 items you pick up would ring up for the wrong price. A Family Dollar in New Jersey wasn't far behind at 68%. These aren't just flukes. They're proof of a massive breakdown in their operations. So the big question is, why, right? How can this be happening so often and on such a huge scale? Is it just a bunch of mistakes, faulty scanners? Well, it turns out the answer is a bit more complicated. It's actually a business model that creates the perfect storm for these errors to happen over and over again. So here's how it goes down. The corporate headquarters can update prices in their main computer system instantly. But back at the store, you have these chronically understaffed crews who are supposed to manually change hundreds, sometimes thousands, of tiny paper shelf tags. They're already overwhelmed with massive new shipments and a million other tasks, and they can't keep up. So what happens? You get a constant, predictable mismatch between the price you see on the shelf and the price that scans at the register. And this quote from a former employee named Stephanie, it just says it all. The pressure on these workers is so intense that some of them admitted to just throwing the new price tags away. Think about that. It's a system that's basically set up for failure, and it's the customers who end up paying the price for it. All of this data, all these statistics, it all brings us back to the people who are actually being hurt by this. These overcharges have a real, tangible impact on the lives of shoppers, and many of them are on incredibly tight budgets. Just take a moment to consider Linda Davis, a 64-year-old shopper in Ohio. She does what a lot of us do. She adds things up in her head as she shops. But then she gets to the register and the total is way off. For someone living on a fixed income with only so much cash in their pocket, that moment of confusion and panic, it's just devastating. It can mean the difference between having enough food and having to put essentials back. And for so many customers like Linda, it's not as simple as saying, well, just shop somewhere else. For a lot of folks, that might mean having to pay for a bus ticket they can't afford or finding a ride they just don't have.
They are, for all intents and purposes, a captive audience, and they're often forced to shop at a store they might not even trust anymore.
And all of this creates what you could only call a cycle of distress. You've got these corporate promises of accuracy that just don't match reality, penalties for getting caught that are too small to even matter, and customers who are left with very few, if any, other options.
This is where things get, well, pretty frustrating. On one side, you have the official company line. They say they're committed to pricing accuracy and take customer trust seriously. But on the other side, you have the cold, hard facts. Thousands of failed inspections, error rates as high as 88% in some places, and lawsuit settlements in state after state. The words and the actions, they just don't line up at all.
So you might be asking, how do they keep getting away with this? Well, a big part of the problem is that the penalties are frankly a joke. Some state fines are capped to just $5,000. That is a drop in the bucket for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Some states don't even inspect for price accuracy at all. Get this, in Wisconsin, even after a huge settlement, Dollar General stores just kept failing inspections. To these companies, paying the occasional fine is just the cost of doing business. It's cheaper than actually hiring enough people to fix the problem. And this all ties into a much bigger, more complicated issue. These stores often pop up in what are known as food deserts, communities that have very limited access to full-service grocery stores. So on one hand, they fill a really critical need for that captive audience we talked about. But on the other hand, many argue they actually make the problem worse by pushing out local grocers and limiting access to fresh, healthy food.
This quote from Caitlin Miller, who lives in a small town in New York, it just powerfully sums up this whole cycle. It's not just about being overcharged a couple of bucks. It's about being caught in a bigger trap, a lack of choices that affects the health and well-being of her entire family. It's a choice between, say, an expensive, maybe not so great piece of fish from a faraway supermarket or a processed high-sodium meal from the only store in town. So, all of this leaves us with one final thought. The promise of a bargain is incredibly powerful, especially when money's tight. But when that promise is consistently broken, right there at the checkout, over and over again, it forces us to ask a really tough question. When a bargain isn't really a bargain, who's the one that truly pays the price?